You're watching the Weekly Wednesday What's Up, the section of my channel that I tell you everything that's going on in my life in 1 week or so. Guys, what can I say for this particular week? It's been a trying week, I think, for everybody. Been pretty hard. A lot of shit going on. The world is on fire right now. Protest and riots and looting in America. And on top of that, I guess I can just give you my spin of things, as there's also been protests in Japan as well in terms of police brutality. And I guess, I think I've said a few things about this already, but I'll keep this pretty short in what I think, with not trying to ignite the fires and flames and such. It's hard because there's a lot of people around me that are definitely upset by it, and even being out here in Japan, we're feeling it. Especially with so Terry just celebrated his first Japan anniversary, and that's a hard thing for him. As one of the things we kind of talk about, we were just having a discussion the other day during a recording, and it's like, nobody feels safe to have children anymore. And then even further, nobody feels safe. Like, we feel safer in an entirely another country, a somewhat xenophobic and homogenous, I think that's the word, country, where you are very, very much the minority, but you're kind of like a interesting specimen, like a rarity, or like I don't know, you're like a Pokemon or something like that, right? Opposed to, you feel safer. Like, yeah, people are gonna people are gonna be sometimes bewildered by you, but it doesn't mean like your life is going to be taken away. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's a discussion that I often have sometimes about having kids. It's like, well, damn, man, do I want to raise my child in a world where they get treated differently because of their skin color, or because they're darker or than somebody else? Or do I want to raise my child in a place where they might possibly be killed over their skin color? That's the craziest thing about all of that, and profiled and killed. And I think that's the bigger issue, and where that comes up, So I don't know, but aside from all that, because I said I didn't want to make that go into that too deeply, but what I will say is the fact that I am happy to see so much attention to the actual rightful cause of this being taken attention to. I'm seeing so many celebrities and so many proper influencers out there, and of course there are really bad ones out there as well, taking advantage of the situation, just like the looters and the people doing riots are taking advantage of the protests and such. Whenever there's some sort of mobilization, and it's something to also keep in mind, it's weird. It's like, it's literally like the Joker movie. Exactly how the Joker movie panned out. And because let's not forget that the corona situation was going on, and it's still going on, and people were locked up in their houses, and people were already sort of antsy, just like the Joker movie. It was heating up. And what was that movie called? Hard Times, and then Summer of Sam. All of these movies, Do the Right Thing. It's heating up. People were losing their mind already, and a lot of people were just looking for this excuse. This was just the tipping point to just go fucking wild and shit. The haves versus the have-nots. So I think that it's a lot deeper than just protesting over one black man that was murdered in the street. That was definitely the tipping point for a lot of people. But what I will say is that, again, I'm happy to see that so many people are stepping up and giving Black Lives Matter the attention that it really properly deserved 4 or 5 years ago. That's the thing. And I'm glad that it's become such an international thing. I knew it was a thing when I knew it was going to be something big when Oshima Yuko from AKB48 and Hitomi Tanaka, a Japanese adult video star, are posting, blacking out their social media. Now, I know some people feel like that's going to be Slack division, but I'm all for it. Like, if it just gets more people talking and more people being aware, and you see companies standing behind this situation, yes, I get it. For the rest of us who have been doing that from day one, it feels like Slack division, right? And it feels like it's just a trend thing or whatever, but I don't care. I want that shit to be a trend, just the same way where going green was trendy and then it actually became a thing to actually companies adapting going green. That's the way I want Black Lives Matter to be, like that, because people really demonetized demonized the term of taking a knee in Black Lives Matter when it was peaceful, and tried to make all lives matter. But that wasn't what the point was. And I remember arguing with one of my editors about this situation years ago. And I hated that, the fact that the core point of what that was standing for, Black Lives Matter, was being demonized and trying to be saturated and filtered to the point where, yeah, where it became like all lives matter. But no, all lives don't matter until you start giving a shit about Black lives, right? Which people don't. And then on top of that, I mean, I just 20 minutes ago, I just saw a retired police officer shot in the fucking stomach and killed on the street by looters and shit. And they were trying to break into a pawn shop. And, you know, it's probably not going to get a lot of attention because it doesn't fit the narrative. Had he been like a white dude, like that fucking whack version of Oliver Queen out there saying all lives matter, and he had a fucking crossbow trying to kill people, he got his shit beat up, and then they sat up there and interviewed his ass. Yeah, that fit the narrative. So okay, so wrapping everything up here, all I'm gonna say is just be aware of what's going out there, and all I can say is when you see a post, you dig deep into that, man. Like, because there's a narrative that the media will always play for you, but you got to dig deeper and just try to do the research and such. And you know, before you see, like, man, Trump, the White House, they're good at that. You see that announcement that they made by the church and everything, but then when you realize what the reality was of how they did that announcement, anyways, all right, moving on. Shit, that was 8 minutes already. Sorry about that. Moving on. The other issue over the weekend was I had to talk with my daughter and about the Hana Kimura situation. Hana Kimura was a very aspiring, amateur, semi-pro wrestler who was on the show Terrace House, and she, after a series and hundreds of negative tweets and being confined in quarantine, self-isolated and shit, just with just negativity surrounding her, she took her own life. She attempted one time, slit her wrist, and then after that, she tried it again with gas and was successful in killing herself. So that came out, that news actually broke right around the same time the Snyder Cut came out, so I didn't really have time to really look into it, but the more I looked into it and the more Japan was reacting about it, it was sad to hear. And Terrace House is just a stupid reality show, but it's fairly scripted, and producers get people to get into arguments, and they, you know, for ratings and things like that. But you know, that reality, very similar to YouTube, there's a kind of persona that you'll have on these reality shows, but you know, it's still basically you. And so people got really upset about this one incident that happened on the show, and they painted her as the villain, and fans and whatever you not just kept on telling her she should fucking kill herself, and she did. So uh I didn't really know anybody that was actually close to it. None of my students actually watched that garbage kind of television, but I found out that uh, because my Japanese family comes from a wrestling background, and it kind of started to, I started thinking about that, so I messaged her, and she was pretty depressed because she was a fan of her, and she was a fan of the Terrace House show, but she's getting through it now, getting better. And whenever they have a public memorial, because they had a private funeral already for her, but when they have a public memorial, I will try to attend that with her, and she can try to get some closure as well, because that is important. It's always terrible when somebody you admire and a semi-celebrity, or I mean in general, when somebody takes their life, but when it's somebody that means something to you, um, it's a terrible thing. So that's been my life recently as well. So man, I don't know anything else that I really want to tell you guys, talk to you guys about this time. It's been a trying week for everybody. It's been a dark week for everybody. But let's just try to remember what we stand for, what principles we stand for. I was watching Being Black, Black Experience in Japan. They were Ranzo was having a live stream, and I tried to get on there to talk, but you know, people were just kind of venting and just sort of talking about it. And as much as I appreciate what Ranzo does in letting people talk, a lot of people were just ranting and like having their own agenda. And I think that was the difficult point. Was I think Ronzo was definitely trying to get to a really good point, but yo, every call was like 45 minutes or something. It was like long, and it was just people just blaming and pointing fingers and blaming other people instead of looking to themselves as how they can choose. And I mean, I think that's the overall thing, is like people are going to always complain. I mean, I just read an article here to where Wendy's, or somebody that invested in Wendy's or something, is pointing to the donated to the Trump reelection, but then immediately what you will see is somebody like, well, you know, that's all companies do that, and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, don't worry, what about this company like that? And a good example is you go to the Snyder Cut, and it's like, we start talking about certain issues about the Snyder Cut, and we're like, well, what about when like that, right? And I noticed that's an interesting tactic, and a lot that's an interesting diversion that people will always go to. Instead of looking at the issue, they will bring up other issues to try to make it seem that it's acceptable then. And it's an interesting thing I keep seeing a lot of people do that, and it's not particularly diversion, but it's somewhat of a subdiversion, where people will say, well, you know, other people do it, so it must be okay, or whatever, right? Instead of actually looking at like, no, this is actually wrong, so we shouldn't be doing it at all. Yes, the other things are bad, but let's not forget exactly what we're talking about here. And that what is that old saying? Two wrongs don't make a right. Anyways, so yeah, that's it, guys. That's all I want to say. It's not really in the mood this time, but I definitely want to get something out there for you guys, and we will continue to have more content. I'm actually going back to work now on a limited schedule. Japan is slowly opening up, and I will just continue to enjoy the streams and try to stream with you guys as much as possible. We had a good time during the shutdown, but obviously it's going to get a little bit limited as time goes by. But we're going to keep on pushing. All right, speaking of which, I'm going to jump on Twitch right now. I'll talk to you very soon, aka SAN_plays on Twitch. Peace, y'all. And I will let you guys know what's up next week. Take care of yourselves, guys, and be strong.